Shane, we're back.
We're back. Good morning.
So good morning. Yeah, so it's we record our podcast on Friday. It's February 9th. We're excited to be back to discuss, what we're finding interesting in the space of AI and how it affects us humans, and more importantly, like how do us humans, keep the edge. And I think today we decided to talk about all these tools being developed for a range of sort of people that but specifically we're looking at like the tools that are sort of helping software developers and how tools are making their way into the software developer's life. And there's a lot of statistics going around about um how efficient, you know, LLMs and Gen AI is having a positive effect on developers' lives. So we're gonna just kind of chat broadly and widely, or broadly and narrowly on that subject, and see where it goes. I know, Shane, you've done a little research on it, and we've done. So why don't we just kick it off?
Yeah, let's do it. I mean, a few interesting reports have come out. I mean, one of the things that makes being in this industry, paying attention to this industry so tough is that interesting reports are constantly coming out. Um,
Yep.
but there were a few in particular that we took a look at. One is the report that came out recently from CB Insights, Tech Trends 2024. And then the other, which I thought was interesting for many reasons, is one from a company I had never heard of before called FlexOS, um, which published a report specifically on the state of the AI industry, focusing even more specifically on where all the usage is in the industry among these many, many AI tools that have come out. And I know you looked at some other sources, including those as well.
Yeah, I've been following this. Being an old veteran from this web development and software development, I've been keeping my eye on this pretty carefully. And the CB Insights and the Flex one were interesting. I think we can get into it. I mean, clearly what's the CB Insights reports, kind of saying is that, you know, software developers are still in high demand. And there's a lot of, AI co-pilots that are going to be kind of maturing and sort of helping the software developers world. And I, in general, agree. I mean, I think that I'm in agreement that you know, us as software developers for years have always adopted new tech to help us get our jobs done, whether that's a library, or whether that's a IDE or any of that kind of stuff. Like we're used to sort of seeing new stuff to help us. I think the interesting bit about Gen AI as it relates to software developers is that it actually can help do the work. Now it gets in the way a lot of the times, you know what I mean? I mean, you know, as you know, like when you're in an IDE, there's all this IntelliSense, like completion, and that's been around for a really long time. It'll complete, um, and that's kind of unique to the software industry. I don't see like writing, like prior to like the LM coming out. I never saw like if I'm writing a paragraph or an email, it couldn't complete like a thought for me. You know what
Hmm.
I mean? And in software development, you could be writing like a function, and the function could like IntelliSense could like kind of help you finish the function and kind of like make it tidy on the page. But with the co-pilots, it's actually even doing more. You can actually really sort of ask ask it to like refactor something, or you could ask it to write a unit test. And that's really early days right now, considering most of these tools are just being released, early last or late last year and early this year. And what's happening is like you're having people say like, hey, software programming jobs are going to be eliminated. And I'm in the school of thought that that's not going to happen in the short term. But I'm a real believer in super convenience wins. And so, you also at the same time for the last, I don't know, 10 years, Shane, about all this low code and no code sort of movement
Yeah.
where, you know, that's been that might not have been affecting the software developer directly, but it's low code, no code solutions have been selling into, like, sort of business people where they can actually use low code and no code solutions to get a lot of stuff done that would normally have gone to, like, an internal IT group.
Mhm.
So, where I think the challenge is for all these new software tools that are oriented at, like, software development, I think that they are gonna be directed towards product managers, you know, those sorts of people where it's like, "Hey, like, don't even go to your developer, just prototype the whole thing using our Gen AI tool and, get it good enough, show it to the stakeholders, and then perhaps then you could including, your dev group, whether they're internal or external." And I think that that's where it's gonna not necessarily eliminate software developers' jobs. It's just like the low code, no code movement can actually gain more strength inside of organizations. I don't know
Yeah.
what you think about that, but, I'll
Yeah.
pause there.
Yeah, there's a lot in there. I mean, I think it's worth reminding, um, listeners why we are doing this in the first place,
Yeah,
which is really, it's really all about a focus on the humans behind the AI and the humans who we want to enable with AI. And a big conversation now is around what are the most relevant skills to even have in this new AI driven economy. And there's a big debate within, that, within that topic around just how relevant are the technical skills, specifically coding. Um, you and I have talked about it before. Like, does it make sense to learn how to code nowadays? Especially given the rise of, as you said, the no code tools, right? And I think there are valid arguments on both sides. Um, at the end of the day, though, and I'm speaking from someone who doesn't have a background as an engineer. You and I worked together for 7 years at this point, and we always find ourselves, I would say, really very much at the cutting edge of new technology, and working in that industry. Even as someone who doesn't have the classic training, you must learn the new tech, right? Um, I went back to get an MBA several years ago, and I can't tell you how often my classmates would say, the biggest barrier to starting a new company was finding a technical co-founder, right? And on campus, a lot of people in the business school were constantly in search of that technical co-founder because it was the biggest, pain point in going from idea to an actual solution, right? So
right.
when I think of low code tools, low and no code tools in particular, I think you're right. Like, it's really about, being enabled to get a solution that is good enough, right? Good enough to showcase the vision, good enough to give to a team who can run with it. And I think that trend is just going to accelerate, right? Like, now there's so many different tools available to you. If you're non-technical, to get a website up, to get a, payment gateway up, to get, to even do design, right? Like banner images, you know, now with just a few clicks of a button, you can create your own logo, you can create your own banner images, you can create your own banner ads. You can do so much now that you just couldn't do in the last
Yeah.
like months, right?
Ye
That
yeah,
said, though, like the one thing I would add to that though, I think to go from a base model, right, an LLM, like to really be able to tap into, this extremely powerful technology and go from that to an application, you need an engineer to really like remain at the cutting edge. The industry is just moving too fast to be able to rely solely on these low code and no code tools, right? So
yeah.
I'm
Oh,
not
yeah.
saying that everyone, needs that necessarily, because ultimately, and this is another thing we can talk about if you want, but ultimately it's like, where's the moat? Everyone talks about where's the moat if you're building a company. And one of the big ways that I think you and I very much agree on to create that moat is really in the user experience, the product itself, not necessarily the tech. But I still tend to think that, like, now maybe more than ever, having a really deep understanding of the tech, learning at least a little bit about how to code is a very, very valuable skill. And I don't think that's going to go away because the tech's going to keep advancing and you're going to keep getting new breakthroughs that you want to be able to develop on.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, you said a lot there. I think that the thing I want to sort of punch in on is like the you know, the co-founder or like someone that you can sort of pair with that can say like, "Hey, I have this idea. It's deeply technical. I'm not deeply technical. Can you help me develop it?" That that sort of insinuates that you actually have to find that human. And I think today, you don't need to find that human. I actually challenge people all the time. It's like, no, you don't. Just get on one, whether you're using one of the LLMs out there. Um, I think you could start describing your idea in detail and ask it to start coding you some stuff up. Now, if you are at the point where it's like you don't even know what to do with the code once it's like printed to the screen, yeah, you still are gonna need like, and that's quite possible that's like a majority of all business people, right? And so that necessitates like, okay, you still need some sort of someone that's more technical
Hmm.
around you, but you could also ask the LLM like, "Hey, I you just printed all this stuff for my screen. How would I actually go and get this to run?" Right? And so I think that the ideation to actually some sort of prototype or some proto code to show your idea to, a customer or to a colleague, that is getting crushed in
Yeah.
terms of time from idea to development. And I think I'm on this theme and, I've talked about this, like, there's this compression effect happening, like, things are happening faster. They appear to be happening faster, meaning idea to prototype could happen, you know, technically in minutes rather than hours or days or weeks. And I feel like that is where I tell the software developer, yeah, there is gonna be less ask of you because your business partner may say like, "I'm gonna actually just kind of do this myself for a little while," right? And then they'll come to you because at some point you need to formalize the product and get it put into like a cloud and get it running. And the LLMs aren't really the Gen AI systems aren't really able to do that as well as a well-trained engineer. So as an engineer, I think that you're gonna need more and more generalist engineers that can be paired with business people, if that's the arrangement, and you can heavily rely on a lot of these co-pilots to sort of guide a lot of some of the code production, right? But not like your other point was like, I think coding is gonna be still a valuable skill. Yeah, absolutely, like, because, like, the higher up as a developer you move from the actual metal, the less and less you know why and how it really works, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And I think that is probably the number one reason why I would recommend that, anybody that is working in and around this space, um, really should start to build a stronger technical knowledge. There's a lot of ways you can do it. I mean, every morning I wake up and I just watch, videos from Udemy, Coursera, a lot of these different sources. And I think for no other reason than just to understand the vocabulary, right? Like you have to be able to communicate with the folks that you are directing and allocating and delegating to. I think it just makes you a much stronger business leader. I mean, if you know how to build with them, even better. But I don't know that that's necessarily required in this new age, right? And one of the big themes that I also like to talk about is, in addition to the skills required for this coming wave, the current wave, um, is really in um, like how leaders need to evolve, right, for a much smaller organization, right? Like so, there's been a lot of chatter in the last few days about this interview that Sam Altman gave. Where
yeah,
he talked about having an internal he's got a chat group with a bunch of other tech CEOs, and they've got this betting pool on when will the first one person unicorn be formed, right? And you and I have talked a lot about the fact that, the billion-dollar, enterprises of the future are not gonna be run by really large teams of thousands or even hundreds of people. It'll be very small teams who understand how to use AI to do a lot more with a lot less. Right. And that begs the question, okay, if it's going to be a much smaller team, what's the skill set? If it's going to be a one person team, what what skill set does that one person have, right? I'm not sure it's coding.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Oh,
and yeah, I don't know what a one person company is, Shane. So it's like I think it's like one person with a lot of
yeah,
outsourced or to AI agents or to other groups because that it's going to be hard to sort of gin up a one person anything that's going to
yeah,
generate $1 billion of value, and hundreds of millions of dollars of sales. But yeah, I think that you're going to delegate a lot more.
mhm,
And you'll probably be a generalist, and you're absolutely gonna be someone that can actually connect with customers, and,
exactly,
let's face it, most engineering talent, aren't sort of, extroverts that are able to sort of, like, read the room and cajole a customer into buying from them. They operate at sort of a different level, so I think that the 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 it's the billion-dollar single person operations probably stacked towards someone that can kinda really understand who they're selling to and why. And
mhm,
that's kinda like a confidence person, like a great con man is like they know the mark. And you can kinda think like that's someone who possesses the opportunities, the skills to, like, marshal a lot of crazy opportunities to kinda force this thing to kinda get everyone to do something, right? And, yeah, I mean, we think that I mean, you'd already see it. It's like, there like, people talk about Kodak as a company was, like, hundreds of thousands of people, and then Instagram was, like, 100 people or, like, you know what I mean?
I think it was,
Or
like, maybe an
yeah,
order of magnitude less than that, like,
yeah,
they're
so we're
think
moving that's the whole compression thing. Like, I'm feeling that there's this, like, overall compression on everything that you can produce more output, quality with less.
yeah.
That's the j and kinda
Yeah,
switching
and that
towards
compression means it's like, well, okay, well, what does it compress to? And I think I agree with you that ultimately it's the oldest skill maybe in existence that will be the most relevant, which is the ability to connect with and mobilize people. Is that a salesperson? Is it, more traditional leader? I mean, I think, sales, for example, is a skill that will just never become irrelevant. You need to know how to connect with not just your internal people, but with your customers and clients. Um, and the other is, delegation, like, or allocation, right? It's like, how do you allocate these resources? Whether it's, the AI tools themselves or agents, which, we can talk about also, which I think are, definitely coming. Or if it's just allocating people. And I think you're right. I, d- I also think about this, notion of a one person unicorn is kind of um, a myth in that it's not truly one person. Like, you're going to still have, I think, at least for the next few years, a lot of outsourced talent, contractors, interns, whatever it may be. But it's all going to be in, like, how do you allocate those resources efficiently?
yeah, I think that yeah, I don't know what they mean by that, but nevertheless, their point the more the point is like you can probably achieve a lot more with a lot less, and that like, kinda bringing that back to the software developer, like, I think you watched that CS50 video I shared with you and it was like Dr. Matt Welsh, who's got a new company that's all about sort of developing, AI tools for developers. And his sort of central claim was like software development is sort of doomed, right? He laid out a pretty compelling case that we've been as software developers for 50 years, on the problem of making software development easier, and it simply hasn't gotten a lot easier, right? And he kind of showed examples of like a video game written in COBOL, BASIC, etcetera, and it's still sort of like esoteric, right? And, yes, humans over the last 50 years can write amazing code, right? There's no doubt, and there's very talented programmers that can write and be inspired to kinda solve really interesting problems, um, using software. I think his central point was, like, you're not y y he you're not gonna beat a computer at some point. Like you
Mm,
know, you're like if you're playing Go against a supercomputer, you're not going to win, right? And I think that directionally is probably true, but you'll still need software developers to make really creative choices and operate such computers to develop code.
mm,
I think that's going to be there, and I think that as a software profession, I think that you're going to see compression, meaning business people are gonna say, we can get a lot more done with fewer team members," or, "We don't need as many team members that are in this class of software development. We can use generalists that can get done more with Copilot." So, like,
yeah.
on a general level, even though, Matt Welsh was, like, saying kinda, like, had like, a clickbaity headline to his CS50 class at Harvard, I actually listened to it a couple times, actually, and I can't disagree with his central thesis, and in 5, 10-year horizons, I could see a talented engineer that has, you know, a senior knowledge of making software at work at scale and deployed as into production, being able to operate at a higher efficiency with fewer team members that are all leveraging, really sophisticated, fine-tuned, algorithms to, like,
Yeah.
produce code.
And there's a
I
couple of data points in this, CB Insights report that
Yeah,
reinforce that.
well
This at
yeah,
least
let
now, right? So I'm looking at page 23 of this, massive presentation, and, the takeaway here is that if you're a software developer, you're in very high demand right now. The figures that this mentions is that, between 2022 and the end of last year, the, the software developer pool, um, the demand for that skill set was up by 26%, while the rest of all other occupations was only 3%, right? And meanwhile, you've got this explosion of developer tools in the AI market, to really accelerate that class of users. And the final thing, that I'll mention on this topic is that, the low code and no code platforms, at least if you look at the data that they've got in this presentation, in one of the following slides, don't seem to be doing as well. Now they may have just homed in on, a very small subset of those low code and no code tools, but they are illustrating the fact that a lot of them are going through valuation compression, which could mean,
Yeah.
it can mean a number of different things specific to this, very small subset of companies. But I think the implication is that maybe these, low code platforms are just not there quite yet. And
Yeah,
we
they're
know a lot of developers who just don't trust the tools yet to be able to use in production.
well, I
I
mean,
think
like,
that will go away very soon, but that's what, this data is saying.
I think a couple things, right? Like, listen, hiring dev teams is not been easy since '94, when I'm in the game, starting the game, and it hasn't gotten any easier, really. Um, Onboarding teams takes a lot of time. Getting teams to work takes a lot of time. It doesn't matter if they're software developers or not, but it's hard, right? And when you get a great team, you wanna keep them, and they're in high demand. But what's in higher demand is the companies that actually hire them is to perform at higher efficiency with more productivity. And when you have a scarcity, it actually begs the question of invention. And some of this invention is, hey, we now have AI that can make your company go faster and have more productivity with the same amount of scarce resources. You know what I mean? And so this pressure on companies to go through digital transformations with a tight labor market is what's happening is low code's happening to solve edge cases for IT departments or marketing departments to create a database. Listen, if you wanted to create a database 10 years ago, you needed a whole team. Now you go to Airtable. That's not changing. That's gone. Like you know what I mean? You want to have like a, it back in 10 or 15 years ago, people won't even know this word, but you needed an intranet. You needed to hire a team to build your intranet. Now you just use Notion. That is a low code, no code solution, right? So those are getting solved. your IT resources and your engineering resources are not deployed to maintain those as much. They're focused on the core software products that your company's offering as a service. But even then, with scarcity on those resources high, engineering managers are getting pressure from CEOs saying, we need to move faster, we need more output. Here comes Gen AI. Yeah, maybe we can have our same engineering task force team, you know, adopt these new tools to get stuff done faster. And I know for 100% you're going to get lots of resistance inside the engineering team saying, "Oh my god, I'm not going to fucking deal with this." Right? You know what I mean? It's just like because we have we have our paths, we just have our frameworks. We don't want to interrupt it.
Yeah.
But the pressure from the
There's
C office is gonna be way more intense. And so, my recommendation for engineers is just to start adopting it. You're gonna have to start using this stuff. Work it into your systems. No one likes writing unit tests? Great, have your AI write unit tests. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? There's gonna be ways that you can leverage this Gen AI in coding that's gonna give you a performance boost. And if you're a senior developer, it should give you a performance boost. If you're a junior developer and you don't have much experience, you know, and you're not gonna be able to output as much as as a senior guy, this is where I think the contention's gonna be. Your team might say like, "Look, we don't have the budget for more junior developers. We're gonna double down on our senior developers and get a lot of Gen AI in here." And eventually, I think that's where the evolution happens. It's like senior developers with really sophisticated Gen AI systems that are maintaining your code base and revving it with a smaller amount of people gives you higher productivity and better bottom lines. Your chief executive officer is gonna be like, "Great," because it's hard to hire all these guys. I think that the software engineering profession is not going anywhere. I just think it's gonna have more competition.
yeah. Um, yeah, I think, again, I'm looking at another slide in this deck, and it's talking about Gen AI and gaming. And, we talked about, I think, the resistance from at least some people in the engineering community to leverage these tools. But within the gaming sector, and you and I in our past life, had a lot of experience there, creating a lot of immersive content. Um, this stat says that 64% of developers in the gaming industry are already using or want to use Gen AI. And one of the big reasons, and we can speak to this out of personal experience, is just the dev costs that can be like
Yeah.
completely slashed. The time to market, right? This other stat says the average game time increased by 5% due to the interaction with AI non-player characters. That's more on the demand side, the player side. But the bigger stat was just the one they quoted in terms of cost, right? 94% decrease in the cost to develop a lot of these gaming assets because of Gen AI, right? So that's not going to go away. And I think
No.
the
Yeah.
percentage of people in the developer community, I think, is just going to skyrocket. The ones who want to use and have to use these tools.
Yeah.
There's not going to be a choice.
Yeah, so kinda getting back to the human-centered AI that we're talking about and like, like becoming AI literate. I think if you're putting your head in the sand on all this stuff, you're gonna be in big trouble. I remember when a lot of developers that I used to work with, just having people resist, like, adopting JavaScript. You know what I mean? There was so much
Mm.
resistance back in the day, and then there was 1,000 JavaScript, 1,000,000 JavaScript, programmers that came out, and then it shifted. It all shifted to React and all this stuff, and you're gonna have a population of people that are gonna resist, and there's gonna be people that are gonna adopt. I think if you're adopting AI as a co-pilot, as a tool to get your job done faster as a developer, you're gonna come out way ahead. And the people that are gonna, like, resist it for really logical and smart reasons. If you're an engineer that's resisting Gen AI, you are smart. You're probably right, but the demand for super convenience and the demand for actually higher productivity and output is gonna win. And you can look at the JavaScript, you can look at the world, go back in time, ask all the developers that were resisting JavaScript where we are today. You know what I mean? And so I actually think that, like, you know, my recommendation to the executives that I speak with, that are non-developers, is to say you have to actually, start using Gen AI across the board, but more specifically in your developer groups, is if you're getting a lot of pushback, um, you need to kind of you need to equally push back. You're gonna have to say, like, "Look, you should really adopt this." Doesn't mean you need to remove any of your developers, that you just gotta give them space and time to figure out how to use these things, because they're gonna increase, and if you just look at, super convenience wins. Like, it's like if you can adopt something that can actually improve the output and efficiency, then do it, and it will happen. Um, the other thing is you can also start thinking about, if you're a really heavy engineering centric group that has a lot of, like, high secure code, you know, I think you could use, like, code, like, Llama, that's open source, and you could start training. You could have your whole team start training on your code base. You might have 10 years of code, and hyper tune a model that's specifically your code base, that's only used by your team. It's completely private, and so when you onboard a new engineer, they automatically have an onboarding copilot written by your group, trained by your group, fine-tuned by your group, and have them you onboard a new engineer, great, work with our copilot for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. You can learn our code base, but more importantly, that it could actually help get those junior programmers that you just hired into coding on your specific app, in your repos, much faster than having to do, heavy training. So I just think that there's lots of ways to adopt uh, Gen AI into your path. And if you're a so that's for teams that have groups of engineers, and the teams that don't have any groups of engineers and they're just starting with ideas, start with this, embrace it. It's gonna get better and better. Shane, you know this. You've already been doing a bunch of data analysis yourself, that you would have probably you would rather had a data scientist or a data engineer with you, but you've been doing it on your own using, copilots,
Mhm.
and you've been successful. But
Yeah.
normally you would have written the requirements, you would have written all the requirements, you would have had multiple meetings with people, sat down, handed over, wait 3 days or a week, or do some daily stand-ups. Like, you've crushed all that, you've compressed all that. Now, that makes you highly productive in one area, it slows you down in another area, right? But
Mm.
it's like you're able to get something that you weren't able to get before, and that's amazing. And that
Mhm.
and so I think that Matt Welsh is like, it's doomed, I think is over the top. I think people are overestimating what these LLMs can do today, but I but in 10 years from now, you think you'll be writing code the exact same way, deploying it? Hell no. Like,
Yeah.
there's no way.
I read recently that the shelf life on really any technical skills is about 24 months, right? Meaning a lot of the stuff that you're learning today effectively becomes obsolete in just a few short years.
Yeah, I challenge that. It's like I got started in Unix in the '90s, and everything that I know is actually it's 100% applicable today. The denominator doesn't change that often, the
Yeah.
numerator does. The
Mhm.
numerator changes, like, so it's like, "Oh, hey, you're not writing stuff in PHP as much, you're writing stuff in JavaScript. Oh, you're not using this framework, you're using that framework," So, as software developers, we always had to learn and change. We had to read the man page, et cetera, on all these things. Those changes, maybe 24 months, but, like, if you get, like, a solid discipline in software development, and especially in sort of Unix and that level, low level stuff, like, you understand the TCP IP stack, you understand these things. Those things haven't changed one bit. But the numerator has changed. I think that's a that's probably where I kinda scratch my head and saying, like, well, if you have a bunch of generalists in there and they have no idea how things really work, like,
Mhm.
up into this situation where like no one really knows how any of this stuff works. Like no
Yeah.
one
The
understands like
knowledge is compounding. You could argue
yeah.
that there are certain, technologies and trends that come and go and they fall out of favor, but, it's a bit like understanding history. And that's where I think, the constant learning process really is important, even if you are, quote unquote, business or non-technical person. I have a question for you though, right? You
Yeah.
talked about the need for companies to implement these solutions. Let's say your team just doesn't have the internal staff to be able to implement something like RAG or train on their own data. Like, what do you recommend to those teams?
Well, I mean, you know what I'm gonna say. They hire us, right? Right? Because that's what we do. We help. There's a lot of companies out there that
Mhm.
actually are are running and they have like outsourced dev groups and they used a ton of no code, low code solutions and they have a ton of data. And now they're kind of like going like, well, how do I get that? And the answer is like they have to hire, right? Um, so I think I I think the recommendation that we generally have is like if you're a if you're a business that's operating on the internet, whether you're e-commerce or you're marketing sales, like you actually have to spend the time and money now to adopt an AI strategy that will enable your business to be as competitive as it is now as it is gonna be in a few years. And that means that you have to start adopting the usage of this technology. And where I generally start, and you know this, Shane, is we start by saying, how much time do you spend as an executive or your leadership team or anyone in your group studying the AI software space and how it's affecting your business or your class of business? And if it's very low, I think that's very dangerous. And we recommend that discovery is important and then practice using these software tools in your profession. And largely they don't have the time. A, they don't have the time for discovery. B, they don't have any time for practice. And C, they want someone to do it for them. And that's where really we come in because we're offering sort of like the discovery, the practice, and then also full stop the solution. But if they're not if they can't work with us, we're still recommending that they actually start working with this stuff. And Shane, it's like the internet. It's like there were companies, all the companies had businesses pre-internet, didn't mess around with the internet at all, right? Think about it. Like literally everyone pre-internet was just like, yeah, we don't have a website, we don't have email. And like so it's like you have to ask yourself today is like, are we is AI as important to the world of business as the internet was? And I say Gen AI and its derivatives are probably 10x more important than the internet, right? I mean, internet gave you connectivity, but then once everyone solved connectivity, it was like, okay, what applications and services are you going to provide to customers? Okay, now that everyone has applications and services and connectivity, how are you going to actually create new products and services? And how are you going to make it more efficient and create more productivity? And that's where Gen AI comes in.
Mhm.
So every business that finds themselves on the internet working and they don't look at at AI as an as a moment in the sand of they're nuts. I literally say they're gonna be those companies will all be BlackBerries. They're all BlackBerry. And our recommendation is give your team time to use these tools. I don't know, did I answer your question?
Yes. I'm
Sort
well,
of?
I'm curious, so there we mentioned these reports that we've been looking at. What else in this, CB Insights report, there's a lot in this. I encourage people to check it out if they get the chance. But what else in this really stood out to you? Especially when it comes to just the major trends driving the industry, the companies that are involved. What's top of mind for you as far as, some of the things that were mentioned in this?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of zoning in on the um the title slide where they say DIY software development upends engineering orgs. I think and I think they start off with and we talked about this, skilled software developers are in high demand. You know, like a lot of companies have open recs for developers that they could never fill. I mean, they could have had open recs for, years. You know what I mean? And so you had engineering managers just basically recruiting all the time. Well, when you have an engineering manager recruiting all the time, it means that engineering manager and team is not actually working with the team to develop and make their products great. And so, you know, I think they're saying that that's been a pain point for businesses, like business managers, business leaders. And so, as a result of scarcity in the market, there are all these there's a massive number of software development tools that are emerging to assist developers. Why? Because we can't hire great people, whether sometimes you can't hire them because there's scarcity. Other times, the software developer doesn't want to work at your company because it's not hot. It's not the hottest company, right? And so you just, your selection pool is low because you're not a company, the young software developers or senior software developers see as a career opportunity. So there's a hole. And so that hole is going to be filled by these new software assistants. So you can say, hey, we have 12 great engineers. They want to be here, but we needed 38. The answer is new software that helps the system to actually produce more software better, faster. I mean, so I think that that's the area that I'm focused on. I think that there's massive opportunity there from, a business leaders like they need to know that they're available, and they can maybe shift their hiring strategy from, like, instead of just continually looking, like, double down on the team you have, get them retrained to use these AI tools, invest heavily there, try all of them, see which one the team loves, and see if you can get an efficiency boost. You know what I mean? That's where I was kind of focusing on this thing. And, you know, I mean, Microsoft, look at Microsoft. They bought GitHub, right? Everyone was probably scratching their head like, why are they buying GitHub? I mean, this is done a while ago. But Microsoft's one of the smartest companies in the world. And they bought GitHub, and yeah, sure, it was, accretive to the bottom line, but what's happening now is they've trained on that, and now they have Copilot for GitHub. And what's happening is, like, Microsoft's not having to wait to, like, for the you know, AI to bring them new money. It's actually reinforcing it's reinforcing revenue back into them, because if you're buying GitHub and you're buying Copilot, you might actually start buying more Azure web services. So it's already affecting the AI is already affecting that company's bottom line. So if Microsoft is using AI to drive their bottom line, why aren't you, Mr. Other company, using AI to drive your bottom line? You know what I mean? It's like they figured it out. They bought GitHub. They created a new service using ChatGPT partnership to create Copilot, and Copilot's helping software developers. Microsoft's been a long software developer focused company, and those companies are also now buying more Azure services as a result, right? And so that's been a long strategy. So if you're a business person, you should just be following what Microsoft's doing in some sort of level, right?
Mm.
And so that this document is kind of looking, it's like, AI Copilot supercharged developer productivity. A flurry of code generation tools has emerged. Well, I think Microsoft's gonna stay out ahead. What I don't see here is, where's Amazon in this? Where's Google in this?
Yeah. Look at slide 7, right? So there are two other trends mentioned in this deck, which I think are important. One of
Yeah,
which is the shortage of GPUs in the industry, and then the other is the rapidly approaching shortage of quality data to train these models on. Both of which would factor into perhaps a slowdown in the AI industry. And one of the effects of effects of this is smaller companies linking up with the bigger companies like the Microsofts, like the Amazons of the world, um, to counteract the effects that a shortage like these
Yeah.
might, entail. So if you're a business, that's implementing, new AI solutions, how do you think about these different trends happening in the industry? Is there a reason for concern? How do you think about, what ecosystem you want to build on, right? You mentioned Microsoft as being a leader in this space, but if you're a business just thinking about practical solutions here, like what are your thoughts in terms of, these trends and how you can maintain relevance and ally yourself with the right partner?
Yeah. Yeah. So on the sort of GPU kind of front, like, um, I think that we're in for like GPU demand for probably, a decade, but certainly in the next, 36 months, right? Because the people that need lots of GPU have already put in all their orders, not in 2024, but in 2023 and 2022. And there's only a couple GPU makers on planet Earth, right?
Hmm.
And you can't easily create new GPU fab plants easily. So we're locked in. So GPU is like oil production to me. It's like it has it takes a lot to make, but there's going to be solutions, but they're not going to happen in the next 36 months. You know what I mean? They're going to happen in the like year 10. You're going to have more uh, supply of compute. So the big guys are all, the Amazons and the cloud guys have a lot of GPU. And so all the companies that are sort of emerging all have to have relationships with them because they have to have access to those GPUs. So if you want to spin up 1,000, A100 NVIDIA cards, like you're not going to have them in your personal data center. You know what I mean? So everyone that needs sort of GPU, um, is gonna need relationships with them, and I think that we're working with, BrevDev, Shane, that team, and, like, they're figuring out a solution for smaller teams to find GPU across the market, and I think that that's a really interesting they have a really interesting approach to this, right? Um, I think that, like, if you looked at what, Zuckerberg, I think we covered in our last podcast, he announced that he's buying 350,000 cards. That's like, several billion dollars, right? So I actually think that the people that have access to capital, um, should be buying billions of dollars worth of GPU. Like, and I really think about that as like Amazon. So I'm gonna make sense of all this. Amazon was smart by building a big, gigantic cloud infrastructure because, um, pre-public clouds, companies were faced with the exact question you asked, was like, "Anthony, like, like, if the internet's going is, growing and you're gonna need all this compute, you know, how are you gonna get all the compute to get it?" And it was really hard. Like, pre-public clouds, you actually had to put in an order for your servers, and it would take weeks and months to get. And that meant your product and service, you know, were like weeks and months out. You'd have to get the hardware, rack and stack. It was just a friggin' nightmare. No one even knows how hard that was. And then when the public clouds came out, your time to market was like really quick because you could just go like, I need a lot of compute and you could have it. We're back to that again. It's like if you're trying to build an app that needs a lot of GPU compute, you can't necessarily rely on Amazon being able to give it all to you. And so like people are starting to hoard it because you might need a ton of it. And that's why like OpenAI, you know, um, they have a relationship with Microsoft because Microsoft said, "No, we can build you that cloud operation in the cloud and give you all that compute. But if you need a private version of it, like Facebook needs its own, or Meta needs its own private GPU cloud." So it's really quite interesting. You as a small company are going to have to partner with big cloud operators. People that want hyper private systems are going to have to build their own GPU clusters, and they could offer that to themselves as a service. So let's say you're a gigantic healthcare manufacturer. or you're a gigantic healthcare insurer, you know, you may wanna actually build my recommendation is if you have enough capital, is I would be building my own GPU clusters, training on my own data, and providing that to me as an advantage. So you asked 2 questions, GPU and data. There's the I think what most of people are having trouble with is, um, the 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 open AIs of the world have already sort of, like, trained on all the publicly available data. They've scraped the internet. They've compressed it. That model's available in, you know, 3.5 turbo or 4.0, but there's more data out there, but they can't have access to it, it's private. So so you can create synthetic data. You can have, like, the AI ask you can just create synthetic data, which actually the, uh, PhDs are saying that they're finding is actually helping with training. But all the big companies out there that have private data reserves that no AI system's ever seen, those guys are gonna have significant training data that's unique and special, and eventually those models, if they made public, can become a service to other people. So private data reserves on privately trained, um, models offered as an inference system could become your company's next product, and they don't understand that. But that necessitates that they have the GPU, they have the actual ability to do that, they have the team, and they have the insight to do that, and I think a lot of companies are just flat-footed here completely. And also, getting back to the talent resource, they don't have talented enough product management to actually think through these problem sets, to actually go ahead and build these systems, and so I think that we're gonna see something shake up or they're gonna get shaked out. But data is, you know, if I was a private equity guy right now, I'd be buying companies that are going out of business just for their data.
Hmm.
I'd be like, uh, "Hey, this company's going out of business, but they have they have terabytes of data on, I don't know, buying practices or just, like, customer data, or they have, like, you know, training they have their own data on systems. Just like you're like, "Hey, we want that data." So I actually think that, you know, I think the open AIs of the world would probably wanna buy companies just for their data because why not? It gives their model an edge. Like, if you think about it, open AI's model is really well trained and probably the best out there right now, but, you know, isn't Google gonna try to build the best model in the world? So, like, you're gonna start getting these public models that everyone's gonna use, but they're all probably gonna become as good, um, as the next one, and the only thing they can compete on is the application layer. And so, you're already seeing OpenAI saying, "Hey, we have GPTs," and then they're gonna say, "Hey, we're gonna have, you know, our own custom agents." They're gonna have to move up the stack and become application based. Because just having a generic model is not gonna be good enough, especially with the open source coming. But what's gonna become really important is you could say, my my model has been trained on private medical data that no one else has, and in order for you to use my model, it costs more, you know? So, there's a bunch of stuff in there. You're gonna need GPU, you're gonna need you're gonna need differentiated data that creates differentiated models that can then offered as a service. And I think that that's where it's gonna go. I don't know if I answered your question though.
Yeah,
As
but
Jer Oh,
I'm now starting to get some technical interference. You were fine up until the last, like, 5 seconds for me, and then you cut out completely. I don't know, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you great.
Okay. Yeah, you said a lot there. I'm curious if we wanna distill it even more into real practical steps, and I may be asking a question that you just answered when my, audio cut out, but, small businesses, you know, a lot of times just don't have the technical wherewithal to even think about some of these solutions, right? So when you think about the data front, like how do you think about really creating an advantage for yourself? how do you create a data factory, right? One of the last episodes we did was talking about Publicis, right?
Right.
Digitizing their operating model itself, right? And combining data from multiple different sources into a single source of truth so that everyone in the organization could tap into that data and it could inform their own decisions, right? So, how do you think about, let's say you're a car wash, which is probably our favorite example now, more traditional business. How do you think about what you just said in terms of some practical recommendations for building that data factory, creating a moat for yourself, in that sense?
I think your question was like, hey, small businesses, how are they going to get the edge? I think the edge, they have to actually figure out that, you know, can data inform their business? And uh, can information make you more competitive? And if you're kind of close to saying, yeah, perhaps, then I think that then algorithmic approach using classic machine learning, or even if you even or, classic machine learning all the way to AI. So, um, the answer is like there is a solution. Small businesses have unique problem sets, and these problem sets need to be evaluated in a unique basis to kind of make that sort of recommendation. I think Shannon at a high level is you actually, if you're a small business, you have to get the team that can actually help you just evaluate the questions to ask your business before you can even kind of make any solution recommendations. Um, we're at about an hour and
I
minute.
think I think we need to pause real quick because
Yeah,
I'm getting like 5% of your response now.
that's fine. I think that we'll just give it a wrap here. Shane's saying he's getting some technical different noise on the line here. So at the end of this podcast, we just want to let you know that like we're continuing research here and advising companies, and we're going to be putting all this content out regularly at coai.co, and we'll have that all in our show notes, and we'll look forward to talking to you guys